reported case to the Secretary of State's office in Missouri of voter impersonation. An important distinction. Now, and then the Republicans will say, well, what about voter fraud? And I said, well, I said voter impersonation fraud, which is the only kind of fraud that the law that they want to pass could actually even claim to prevent. There's never been a case of that. My office, because we established the Elections Integrity Unit, has actually done more formal investigations into potential election law violations than any Secretary of State in Missouri history. There's been cases where we've stepped in. There are people who are no longer allowed to vote because they've been convicted of felonies, partially due to investigations my office was involved in. And again, in none of those cases was it a case of voter impersonation fraud. And that's a really important thing to remember when people are talking about this proposal, that voter impersonation fraud, which is the only thing that a really strict photo ID law can even claim to prevent, has not been something that has occurred in Missouri. So, in fact, at one point, we even asked the legislature for 2 additional investigators, for funds for 2 additional investigators for our office for the Elections Integrity Unit. And the legislature, which claims this is a top priority, said no. So, I think it's pretty clear that one side is interested in the political part of this, and the other side is interested in actually making sure that only eligible voters vote and every eligible voter gets the opportunity to vote. So I'm really proud of what we've done on that, and it's important to remind people that we're talking about 220,000 registered eligible voters in the state that have been voting for years. When they walk in, a lot of these folks, raise your hand if when you go in to vote, the person who is the election judge who works, the person who's the volunteer who works the poll, if they know your name already when you walk in through the door. Raise your hand. It's a lot of folks here, right? Because you've been voting at the same, they know you, you know them, it's done at the neighborhood level. There are a lot of people for whom they've been walking in, and their neighbor who's running knows them, knows that they're an eligible voter, knows they're on the rolls. Well, some of those folks, are past driving age, don't have a photo ID that's not expired. Some of those folks are going to be told, if this were to become law, that they can't vote, even though those people know exactly who they are, right? And it's always been interesting to me, the idea that somehow, if your driver's license is expired, you cease to be the person in that photo. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this election has become a conversation about, or an argument in some ways, about whether or not there's promise in this generation. It really is just sort of an argument about what this generation holds in terms of promise. And I happen to believe that this generation holds a lot of promise. Every time somebody suggests to me that the millennial generation doesn't hold promise or is selfish, I think about the folks I served with, so many of which were volunteers from the millennial generation who knew just what they were getting into when they did that. And so I think that's an important part of the conversation, both urban, rural, suburban, otherwise. And in general, what I would say, just to the Urban Summit, is that I've grown very tired. I'm not talking about anybody specific here, but it's just sort of part of the national conversation. I've grown very tired of folks who, when they discuss urban issues, they seem to discuss it in a way that begins with, well, folks in their community need to step up and do X. At some point, there needs to be a recognition of the idea that there's not necessarily a shortage of leaders in urban areas stepping up. I think that's pretty evident from this room. What there is often a shortage of is capital. And so to suggest that the problem is exclusively one of leadership in the urban core is to say that there's no shortage of capital and it's just bad behavior. And I don't think that's the case. I think that the focus has got to be on how do we make it, how do we create an economy where folks from the suburbs and from rural areas can also make money doing business and recognize that they can, because in many cases they can and have been recognized, and recognize that there is capital to be gained and money to be made and business to be done in the urban core, in the community. When that happens, that's ultimately where the difference is going to be made, and that really goes back to no longer just defaulting to, well, their leaders, their business leaders, speaking about it in a way that is apart from us, they and us, right? That they need to step up and do more. That's not how I approach this at all. I approach this with the understanding that when you don't have, when you have food deserts, when you have banking deserts, which is an issue that I've been trying to focus on a lot lately, these are not the result of a lack of leadership from folks who live down the street from somewhere where there used to be a bank, where there used to be a grocery store. It's not their fault that it's not there. It just means that we need to create an incentive system that rewards folks for opening that bank in the community, for opening that grocery store, for that gas station in the community. And that's really where my focus is going to be. So I didn't want to do remarks for long because I wanted to focus on whatever you want to talk about. So I really just would rather open it up to questions. Good.
I'm IFBB Bikini Pro Cat Williams, and when I'm not working out in the gym, I'm searching the web on Cascade Media and What's Up Kansas City. So make sure you check them out.